Welcome everybody to the updated Little Jaws guide, which is an awesome unstable bomber PvE weapon. However, this guide won't dive into PvP, as the gun is just awful in PvP, and you literally have the Jaws as an unstable bomber counterpart for PvP. So without further ado, let's get right into it. As per usual tradition, let's go over the gun's features. So hitting enemies 15 times triggers unstable bomber, which is this gun's keyword feature. Then when hitting enemies affected by unstable bomber, the current unstable bomber final damage plus 10% and a weak spot hits double that damage increase. Lastly, for every 0.1 second of unstable bomber delay, unstable bomber damage plus 20%. So from this last feature, with just the gun, you'll get 20% unstable bomber damage bonus just because of the innate 0.1 second delay. So if you just read the tooltip keyword for unstable bomber, it's a one-time status damage blast of 100% PSI intensity after 0.1 second with a blast radius of 1.5 meters. The damage decays over the explosion distance down to a minimum of 50%. The additional damage is blast element, cannot crit for this gun, cannot strike weak spots, and will not decay with distance. And then they give a reduced version of the damage formula. Now moving on to the calibration choice. Heavy style will be the preferred choice as you'll be able to proc UB more often per mag, and it's just going to be way more consistent. The other option would be lightweight, but with lightweight you're just going to be reloading the entire time while only having 1 to 2 UB procs per mag. Another simple explanation for this is because there's literally just half a second of difference for the reload speed for a trade-off of 2 less unstable bomber procs, which is just horrible. Then for the calibration substats, 2 times elemental damage is what you'd want. I think this is a no-brainer. For the accessories, let's start with the muzzle. So for the muzzle, you'd want the small break if you want the most amount of accuracy possible, which means you'll be shooting in LTS mode as accuracy doesn't benefit for ADS. Otherwise, run the tactical flash hider if you want the most amount of stability, or integrated compensator for a balance between both stats. For optics, preferably you'd be running the compact reflex sight. However, if you do not have that, you can always opt for the tactical holographic sight or even the sealed reflex sight. Then for the tactics, run the Cobra grip for the most amount of accuracy, front guard grip for a balance between accuracy and stability, or tactical combine grip for the most amount of stability. And lastly, for the magazine, run the weighted SMG mag. Moving to your secondary weapon and melee weapon, you'd run as secondary either the Bingo or the Wildfire. This will depend on your weapon to weak spot damage substats ratio, but generally I would lean towards the Bingo as it also gives a 15% increased attack upon a kill, which although it doesn't buff your unstable bomber damage, it'll still benefit the normal bullet damage, whereas for the Wildfire, the attack increase up to 3 stacks is lost upon swapping the gun out. So if I can just showcase it right here, say I just hit this dummy, and I have 3 stacks right on top of my sanity bar. The moment I swap it to another gun, I lose it. Then for the melee weapon, you'd want to run the long axe for its 20% weapon damage bonus granted upon a heavy attack. So heavy attacks activate Fortress Warfare, and Fortress Warfare, what does it give? It gives super armor and weapon damage plus 20%. If you still don't know, the long axe heavy animation can actually be animation cancelled by either swapping out to your gun or by rolling. And another neat thing is that until it spawns, it actually follows you. So if I can just demonstrate right here, I rolled over here and it's going to spawn under my feet, even if I started the animation over there. Now moving on to key gear and gear set bonuses. The key gear you always want to get would be the explosive front top. it gives unstable bomber delay, which is exactly what this gun really needs. Then it also gives you 30% unstable bomber damage, which is again another stat that this gun wants. Just from the key gear itself, it'll give you 30% unstable bomber damage from one of its stat line, and the other will give 60% unstable bomber damage from its unstable bomber delay stat line. The other choices for unstable bomber would be the Shaman Vulture top and the sleek leather jacket, but both of them are for other weapons. So the Shaman Vulture top would be for the jaws, and the sleek leather jacket would be for the gulped lore situationally. Now, another thing for this key gear is, although it doesn't appear in your stat line over here, it's still actually in effect. So it's not because it doesn't appear here that it's not working. Actually, I made a small spreadsheet for the damage calculations or whatever, so if you're interested to see it, I'll probably link it in the comments. Then moving on to your gear sets. Now this is without considering star rating. Ideally, you'd want a 3-piece shelter with 2-piece savior, as long as you're able to keep your HP above 70%. If you don't have that, you can always opt for 4-piece shelter with a 1-piece best C. Other than that, you can then opt for 3-piece shelter and 2-piece heavy duty. But as a matter of fact, assuming all the gold gear is at 1 star and your heavy duty gear is at a high star rating such as 4 or 5 like mine, 3-piece shelter plus 2-piece heavy duty will outperform 3-piece shelter plus 2-piece savior. So it's really a mix and match between shelter, savior, heavy duty, and best C. Moving on to the substats priority, let's get the new suffix mod out of the way, and that would be resonance mods. They are simply bad for this gun, and the reason for this is because you need to first stack it, and when fully stacked, it literally gives the same percent of damage bonus compared to talent suffixes, and talent suffixes don't even need to be stacked. With that, let's move on, and so for everything, go with talent. You could consider an unstable bomber suffix mod on the mask and the gun if you have a really good one that's way better than your talent suffix mods, but the reason I'm not recommending unstable bomber suffixes as much is because you're already getting 140% from the gun and the key gear itself from the 20% for each 0.1 second of unstable bomber delay. And the idea between getting unstable bomber damage bonus versus talent damage bonus is, since they are multiplicative with each other, it means that you should get more of whichever you have less. But in this case, you probably got more unstable bomber damage bonus, and the unstable bomber damage bonus scales less than talent damage bonus as a substat, so getting talent will usually be better. Now let's talk about the rest of your substats. So for unstable bomber substats, look for blast damage bonus and damage bonus versus X type of enemy. Unstable bomber range is meh. It's going to increase consistency against AoE, but not in single targets, so I won't really prioritize it. Then unstable bomber trigger chance is useless since this gun's unstable bomber trigger condition is based on ammo consumption, as it is triggered after 15 bullets shot. And note that unstable bomber will never have the following substats: magazine capacity, reload speed boost, crit damage bonus, status damage bonus, weak spot damage bonus, weapon damage bonus. Then for talent mods, look for status damage bonus, weapon damage bonus versus X type of enemy, magazine capacity, or reload speed boost. Now before I move on to the mods, I just want to quickly say that if you've been enjoying my content and are still not subscribed, I'd highly appreciate the sub. And with that, let's move on to the mod. So let's start with the gun. For the gun, you have two options. For this gun, you have either the Bombardier Souvenir, otherwise you can always run the Supercharged. And here, it's really just going to depend on personal preference and their substats, and here's a comparison. So as you've seen, it's going to be a choice between bigger DPS but needs to be reloaded more often, or lower DPS but you won't need to reload as much. Do note that if you run lightweight calibration, if you don't have a heavy one, right, Bombardier Souvenir is absolute dog water because you'll be refilling like 3 ammo per unstable bomber proc, and you only proc unstable bomber like 1 to 2 times per mag. Moving on to your secondary weapons mod, it's going to be vulnerability amplifier since we're more PvE focused here. Then for the long axe, You can even just not have a mod on it, since the mod effect will never activate as long as you don't have it pulled out when the effect wants to come into play. Moving on to head mod, preferably you'd want Deviation Expert for its fire rate increase and for the status damage bonus on the entire mag, which will increase your UB damage. If you don't have a good one, you can always consider Work of Proficiency right here, Momentum Up, or Elemental Havoc right here. However, they will all be weaker than Deviation Expert. For your mask, Delayed Blast is very important as it gives you a 50% damage bonus to your unstable bomber damage for the delay. The math behind it is you'll have 1000 or 1100 fire rate depending on whether you have Deviation Expert or Momentum Up for the first half of your magazine, right? But here it doesn't matter, since with 1100 fire rate you won't hit the next milestone anyway, but let's just take 1000 here for the sake of example. With 1000 fire rate, you'll be shooting 1000 bullets per minute, which is 16.7 bullets per second. And with the 0.7 seconds of delay from the gun and explosive from top, you end up at 16.7 times 0.7, which is equal to 11.6 bullets fired, which, accounting for Delayed Blast's effect, you'll get 50% ultimate unstable bomber damage. Moving on to gloves, you have two options here, right? So you have Elemental Overload or Status Enhancement. The choice will come down to their substats and to the ratio between your total elemental damage bonus and status damage bonus. Moving on to boots, Covered Advance will be general best. It's less conditional than the other mods, and /or gives more buffs. Then for top, you can choose between Flame Resonance or Munitions Amplifier. It'll depend on their substats. Otherwise, if both have perfect subs, then go with Flame Resonance. Lastly, for pants, you have two options, and they are Precision Charge or Bullet Siphon. If you go with a Precision Charge right here, you'll deal much more damage than Bullet Siphon when it's stacked, but you will deal less damage on your first mag since you have to stack it with weak spot hits. Pretty much you'll need to hit weak spot for it to be stacked, and it's going to be 60% of your mag. So really what you could do is just shoot 60% of your first mag, and from then onwards you will have the buff maximally stacked. If you choose to go with Bullet Siphon, you'll deal more damage than with Precise Strike on your first mag, but deal less damage on subsequent mags. There's also no condition for this, as long as you hit the enemy, but do keep in mind that if you're running a lightweight calibration, the gain with this one will be very minimal due to not having enough bullets to stack the buff completely and shoot enough bullets to gain from it. Other than that, don't use status amplification, especially if you're running a heavy calibration, as with a heavy calibration, the maximum amount of stacks that you'll be able to have on this will pretty much be 2, which is only 20% elemental damage bonus. Of course, if you're interested in my stats, here they are, right here. Moving on to your Cradle buffs, let's start with the mandatory ones or always mandatory ones. You'd want to run Automatic Weapon Enhancement, Tactical Combo, Status Enhancement, First Round Blast, and Series Detonation. Then for the situational ones, it's going to be Master Tactician, Deviation Master, Lone Walker, Steady Hands, and Bounty Hunter. There's going to be some other options such as Advantage Barrier if you struggle to survive. The I talked about are really all just for more damage. And now moving on to food buffs. Actually, let's start with the drinks ones. It's very easy. Whimsical Drink is your best option. 25% status damage bonus. Then for the actual food buffs, Mixed Fried Hot Dog will be best as long as you're shooting at a marked enemy. Otherwise, go with Crumbly Bread. Everything else will be followed by the other stuff such as shellfish meat, assorted canned fruits, stuff like that, French fries, whatever. So yeah. And another important thing is that don't forget that the pan-fried fish buffs are stackable. So you can definitely go get yourself the weak spot damage pan-fried fish, Pompano pan-fried fish, pretty much. There's also the sea bass pan-fried fish and the barracuda. I hope you enjoyed my guide, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel as I immensely appreciate the support. Anyway, if you have questions or video suggestions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments, and for now, take care and I'll see ya in my next one.